How you doing, eh? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Hey, Daf 45 of Masechta Shevuos, friends. Your friends. Okay, today we start the 7th parak of Masechta Shevuos. There is a big old Mishnah, a big old one. It starts in Mem Daled Amud Beis, about halfway through the Amud, and it goes almost to the bottom of Mem Hey Amud Aleph. So we're gonna obviously learn that Mishnah, and then that's what we're going to do. As you could tell, this is like over a week later, and I'm still like a little bit like coldy, but Baruch Hashem, the Rebbeinu Shalom's good. Alright, so Mem Daled Amud Beis, starting the new parak called Kol HaNishbayin Shebator Nishbayin V'lo Meshamen Ve'elu Nishbayin V'notlin. So this is be'etzim the theme of the Perek. And this is something that we've seen before. One second. Okay, sorry. This is a concept that we've seen, Bav Metzia, of course, in several places. I guess though that the source though must be from here. And so the Mishnah starts off by saying, and sets sort of the tone for the Mishnah and the Perek. That generally speaking, when it comes to a Shevuah, you swear and you don't pay. And in the following cases, you swear and you do pay. Right? So let's say, for example, Shimon says to Ruvain, Ruvain, you owe me 100 zuzes. Okay? And, is that a good example? Yeah, why not? Or how about or let's say like a shomer. Let's just use this example. Why not? We'll make it work. Right? So Shimon says to Reuven, you owe me 100 zuzes. Reuven says, I don't. So Midoraisa, of course, he doesn't need to swear. Midorabanan, there's a Shevuos says this. So it's called, that's why I knew I was going to get myself into tricky places. But let's say an 8 echod comes, okay? Whatever, there's different scenarios of Shevuos, but okay. Let's say Shimon comes to court, but he doesn't have 2 witnesses, he has 1 witness. So now Reuven has to swear, okay? Alternatively, you could say it's talking about, let's say, a shomer, right? Shimon comes to collect his object, and Reuven says that, and Reuven's a shomer chinam, says the thing got stolen, it got lost. So we say that Reuven needs to swear that he's telling the truth, and then he doesn't need to pay. So it's not that, right? I feel like it works out better when it comes to the loan. When I was learning this earlier, I worked this same cheshbon out in my head that I'm going through right now. Like earlier today when I was reviewing it, I was like, what example should I use? I feel like I literally went through all these steps in my head. I'm like, okay. Let's go back to the original one. Basically, Shimon lent Reuven 100 zuzes, and Reuven says, I don't know what you're talking about. And Shimon brings, let's say, an 8 echad. He brings 1 witness. So 1 witness can't make Reuven pay Shimon, but he can be mechayev Reuven a shvuah. Okay, so in this case, Reuven swears that there was never a loan, and then he doesn't have to pay Shimon anything, as opposed to, the other option would be, Shimon swears that there was a loan, and therefore that requires Reuven to pay him, and then Betzim collects, right? So it's not that Shimon swears, and then, right, Shimon swears, I did loan you 100 zuzes, and after he swears, he's now entitled to collect. No, that's not how Shevuos work. Generally speaking, it's the opposite. It's that Reuven swears to sort of cancel any obligations, right? So to free himself from any obligation to pay. So Reuven swears, I did not borrow any money from you, and then he's potter. So generally speaking, those who swear in the Holy Torah, nishbayin v'lo mishalmen, they swear in order to be potter from paying. So Reuven swears, I did not borrow 100 zuzes, and he's potter, he doesn't need to then pay. However, ve'elu, the following examples, nishbayin v'notlin. But in these examples, in the following examples, these individuals swear and then collect. They swear that they are owed money, and after swearing, they are entitled to collect that money. Hasochir, a employee, a hired worker, right? So somebody is employed for the day, and he comes to collect his wage at the end of the day, and the balabai, and we're going to go through all these examples. When the balabai says, I already paid you, he could swear that he hasn't been paid yet. V'hanigzol, somebody who is the victim of a theft. V'hanechbol, somebody who's the victim of a wound. V'shekenegdo choshid ala shvua, or if Ruvain is simply somebody that cannot be trusted, right? We're going to give examples of what that is, but if Ruvain is simply not trusted to swear, so Mele is not going to swear, Shimon will swear and collect. And a store owner, a shopkeeper on his ledger. And we are now going to go through each of these examples one by one. Asochir, Ketzad, tell me about the hired worker, the day worker. Omar loy tainli schari sheyesh li biyadchos. At the end of the day, or during the course of the night, Shimon says to Ruvain, I would like to be paid for my work. Hu Omer nasati. Ruvain says, I paid you for your work. V'hala Omer loy notalti. Shimon says, I never received payment. Hareze nishba v'notel. So Shimon swears that is the case, that he in fact never received his pay, and v'notel, and then he's entitled to collect it from Ruvain. So it's not that Ruvain swears that he paid Shimon and then he does not need to pay. The opposite. Shimon swears that he was never paid, and that entitles him to get paid, to take money from Ruvain. Reb Yehuda says, Reb Yehuda, ad shetehei sham miktsas hoda, there would have to be moda b'miktsas. Ketzad, what would that look like? Amar lo tein li schari 50 dinar sheyesh li biyadcha v'omer kabalta dinar zov. That would look like if Shimon says to Ruvain, I'd like to be paid my 50 dinars, where my 50 dinar, I'd like to be paid my 50 dinars, which is 50 zuzes. V'omer kabalta dinar zov, and Ruvain says, you already received 25 zuzes, so therefore I only owe you 25 zuzes. So he's bad. So Shimon saying, I need 50, Ruvain saying, you only need 25. Shimon saying, you owe me 50, Ruvain saying, I owe you 25 betzim. So that's the case where Shimon swears according to Reb Yehuda. Nigzol, the victim of a theft, Ketzad, how so? Also shenichnos leveso lemashkino. If witnesses testify that Ruvain went into Shimon's house to, take stuff. The Gemara is going to talk about it. Shelo b'shus, without permission. Hu omer kelyi notalto. Shimon says, Ruvain, you took my thing. I want it back. Vu omer lo notalti. Ruvain says, I didn't take it. Your thing. Nishba v'notel. Hu omer lo notalti. Hu nishba v'notel. Shimon swears that Ruvain took his thing, and he can extract it from Ruvain. Okay. Where am I? Okay. Fine. Okay. Reb Yehuda Omer says, Reb Yehuda Achetei Sham Miktsas Oda. Reb Yehuda once again says there would have to be a Modeb Miktsas scenario. Ketzad also Amarlo Shnei Kelim Notalto. Shimon says, Ruvain, you took 2 vessels. Vu Omer Lo Natalti Elechod. Ruvain says, Nuh-uh, I took 1 vessel. So in that case, Shimon swears that Ruvain took 2 vessels. And I guess then Ruvain needs to give him 2 vessels if he has them. Okay. Nechbol, a wounded individual. Ketzad also. Ha'me'idin oisoi shenichnos tachas yodoi shalim v'yotza chavul. So I guess it means that Shimon went into Reuven's house looking all strapping and healthy, and left Reuven's house looking like he was hit by a train. And then Shimon says to Reuven, you wounded me. Reuven says, nuh-uh. So Shimon swears that Reuven wounded him, and he can collect payment. Rabbi Yehuda says there would have to be a modeh b'miktzah scenario. Shimon says to Reuven, you hit me with 2 trains. I only hit you with 1 train. So then that would be modeh b'miktzah, and Shimon would swear that I guess he was hit by 2 trains while at Reuven's house, and Reuven, I guess, was the conductor. So then Reuven needs to pay Shimon. Shekenegdo choshed ala shvua keitzad. Tell me about shekenegdo choshed ala shvua. When Reuven is not trusted to swear, so then Shimon swears and collects. Achas shvuas ha'edus. Whether Reuven is suspected of swearing shvuas ha'edus falsely, right? He had sworn that he didn't know testimony when he did, or he had sworn that he didn't have a deposit when he in fact had it. Even a shvuas shav, right? Simply, I don't know, saying a stone is gold or whatever those shvuas shavs were, which doesn't hurt anybody. They're just pointless, and they're usher. Even that would disqualify Reuven from being able to swear, and Shimon would instead swear and take. If Reuven was a gambler, or he would loan with interest, or let's say another type of gambling, or he does business with Shemitah produce. Where am I? Shekinegdo Nishba v'notel. So then, in that case, since Reuven is not trusted, so in that case, Shimon swears and collects. Ayushnein chashudin. If both of them were chashudin, okay, if both Reuven and Shimon are untrustworthy, Chazar Shevuos limkoma to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says the swear returns to its place. I believe the Gemara is going to explain what it means. The swear returns to its place. Reb Meir Omer Yachloku. Reb Meir says they split. They split the liability. V'achinvoni al pinkoso, and a storekeeper on his ledger. Ketzad, what is this scenario? Lo sheyomar lo kosov al pinkosi shato chayiv limasayim zuz. It is not what we were probably all assuming this meant, right? What did we all assume it meant? Well, Reuven walks into Shimon's, what's that called? Like the Shimon's general store. Reuven walks into Shimon's general store, and there is Shimon behind the counter. He says, Reuven, I have here in my ledger that you have a outstanding balance of 100 zuzes. Please pay me. It is not that. That is not what we are talking about. Right again. Kate said, Lo sheyomar lo kosov because shatachayiv limasayim zuz. 200 zuzes. Ooh. Reuven's been going to town at Shimon's general store. So it is not that Shimon says, my ledger says you have an outstanding balance of 200 zuzes. It is not that. Ella, rather, Omer lo, this is interesting. Tein livonai sosayim chitin. Reuven had said to Shimon, hey, can you please give my children 2 sa'as of wheat, and I'll pay you for it. Tein lefoy alai sela ma'os, or can you give my workers, my employees, a sela's worth of smaller change, and obviously I'll pay you back. Hu omer nasati v'hein omim lo natanu. So now what happens is, which is very interesting. Now Shimon claims that he did as he was told. He gave Reuven's children wheat. He gave Reuven's employees. Let's just talk about the employees. He paid the employees right there their money. Right? Reuven asked Shimon to pay Reuven's employees in change. Shimon says, "I did it." The thing is, the employee says, "We never got it." So now what happens is Reuven's being hit from both ends, from both sides. Shimon is saying, "Hey, I paid your employees. Pay me back." But the employees are also saying, "We never got paid. Pay us." So both Shimon and the employees are claiming from Reuven. So again, Ella Omer, where am I? Ella Omer lo tein livonai sosayim chitim. Reuven says to Shimon, "Give my children 2 sa'as of wheat," or ten lefayalai sela maos, or Shimon, "Can you give my employees a seller's worth of money?" Hu Omer, Shimon says, "Nosati." Okay, I let's talk about the employees. I paid your employees for you. Pay me back. Vein Omrim lo natanu, but the employees say we never received payment. So everybody's claiming from Reuven now. Hu nishba v'notel. So Shimon swears that he paid the employees, and then he can get paid back from Reuven. And also v'nishba v'notel, the employees also swear that they never received payment, and they can also collect from Reuven. Reuven's going to be double paying now. Omer ben Nanis, but says ben Nanis, Ketzad elu v'elu boin lidei Shevuos Shabbat. How can we have a scenario, says ben Nanis, this can't be. How can we have a scenario where Shimon is swearing that he paid the employees, and the employees are swearing that they never got paid? One of them is lying. So how can we be milichatchila setting up a situation where we know going into it that we're going to have a Shevuos sheker? One of them is definitely going to be lying. So how can we require both Shimon and the employees to swear that they're telling the truth when it's obvious that one of them is lying? So so there's a different girsa here. I'm going to read it with the girsa change. I don't know, is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. Elahu notel bishvua. That's the girsa change. Shimon swears to Reuven that he paid the employees, and then he can get paid back. And the employees can receive their payment from Reuven, but they don't have to swear, because we can't have both of them swearing. So we say, Shimon, you swear that you paid them, and then he can collect, and the employees can collect even without swearing. Omer lechenvani teinli bedinar peris. Okay. Reuven goes into Shimon's general store, and he says, Shimon, teinli bedinar peris, I'd like a dinar's worth of fruits. I'd like a dinar's worth of fruits. V'nosan lo. So Shimon gives him a dinar's worth of fruits. Amlotainli also dinar. And now Shimon says to Reuven, now please, I'd like my dinar. Amlo nasativ l'cho. I already served you your dinar. V'nasato be'unpali. And you put it in your money bag, in your register. Yishava balabayis. So Reuven swears that he in fact gave the dinar. Okay, so what happens? So Reuven goes into Shimon's general store, and he says, Shimon, can I have a dinar's worth of fruit? Shimon says, sure, here you go. And now Shimon says to Reuven, please, I'd like my dinar. And Reuven says, I already gave you your dinar. And and he says, and you put it into your money pouch. So Reuven swears that he in fact paid the dinar, and zo. Okay. Where am I? So fine. Nosan lo es dinar. If it was the other way around, Reuven gives Shimon a dinar. Omar lo tainli es aperis. And then Reuven says to Shimon, okay, now that I've given you the dinar, I'd like my fruits. Shimon says, the fruits, I already gave you the fruits. You took them home already. So Yeshava Chenvani, Shimon swears in this case. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, Kol she'apeiris biyado, yado al elyona. Says Rabbi Yehuda, so Rabbi Yehuda comes to argue on the Reisha, right? The Reisha was talking about where Shimon gave Ruvain the fruits, and then he says, Ruvain, pay me. Reuven says, I already paid you. So he said in the Reisha that Ruvain needs to swear that he in fact already paid Shimon. Says Rabbi Yehuda, no, he doesn't. Why not? Because Kol she'apeiris biyado yado al elyona, that whoever has the fruits, so meaning in this case, Ruvain already received the fruits, right? We said Shimon gave Ruvain the fruits. Okay. And now Shimon gave Ruvain the fruits, and Shimon's now asking Ruvain, pay me. Ruvain says, I already paid you. The thing is, we can assume that Shimon would not give the fruits to Ruvain until he got paid. Keilu, right? The way that it works generally is that Shimon would first receive his payment and only then give the fruits. It doesn't make sense that, right, it's abnormal. It's not normal that Shimon would give the fruits without first receiving the payment. So therefore, Ruvain's argument lines up, right? Again, what was the scenario? Ruvain comes and says, hey, I want a dinar's worth of fruit. Shimon gives Ruvain a dinar's worth of fruit. Shimon gives Ruvain a dinar's worth of fruit, and then Shimon's now saying, hey, I want to get paid. Ruvain says, I already paid you. So the Tanakama says, Ruvain needs to swear that he in fact already paid him. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, he doesn't need to swear, because we can assume the fact that Ruvain has the fruits means that he most likely already paid, because Shimon wouldn't be giving him the fruits unless he had already received payment. Where am I? Okay, fine. Okay, now we basically have the same exact scenario, but with a money changer. Okay? Ruvain says to Shimon, the money changer, hey, here's a dinar, I want you to change it into whatever you change it into. I guess smaller change or something. Where am I? It's the same case, just swap out fruits for money. So Shimon, the money changer, Shimon's money changing geschäft. So Shimon gives Ruvain the money that he asked for. Omar lo tein li es a dinar. And then Shimon says to Ruvain, okay, now give me the dinar. I just gave you the change that you wanted. Give me the dinar. Omar lo nasativ licha. Ruvain says, I already gave you the dinar. V'nasata b'umpelin, and you already put it in your money bag. Yishava balabayis. So Ruvain swears that he's telling the truth. Nasan lo es a dinar. Omar lo tein li es amos. If Ruvain gives Shimon the dinar and says, okay, now give me my change. Shimon says to Ruvain, I already gave you your change and you put it in your wallet. So Shimon swears that he in fact gave the change. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, ein derech shulchani litein isar ad she'itol dinar. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, like he said with the fruits, Rabbi Yehuda says that in almost all scenarios, Shimon would not give Ruvain his change unless he had already received the dinar from Ruvain. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda argues that in the scenario where Shimon gives Ruvain his change and then says, okay, now Ruvain, can I have my dinar? And Ruvain says, I already gave you the dinar. The Tanakama says Ruvain needs to swear. Rabbi Yehuda says Ruvain doesn't need to swear. We can assume that Ruvain did in fact give Shimon the dinar, because the way that money changers work is that they won't accept, they won't give you your change before you first give them their money, which in this case is Ruvain's dinar. Continues the Mishnah. Kishem she'amru, just like they said, apogemes ksubasa lo tifra ela b'shvua. Just like they said that apogemes ksubasa lo tifra ela b'shvua. Remember that we had that the other day. A scenario where a woman, right, a wife wants to collect her ksuba. Let's say they get divorced. The ksuba is, let's say, 1,000 zuzis. So the wife says to the husband, hey, here's my ksuba, 1,000 zuzis. Document says I'm owed 1,000 zuzis. Pay me 1,000 zuzis. He says, I already did. She says, no, you only paid me 100. Whoa. Really? Did you just say that? Right? She just admitted that the document that she has, the ksuba, that says that she's owed 1,000 zuzas is actually not correct. She's not owed 1,000 zuzas. She just said she already received 100 of it. Maximum, she's owed 900. So therefore, she needs to, now if she wants to collect more, if she wants to collect the balance, she needs to swear that she owes 900, that she is owed 900. Just like they said that in this case she would have to swear in order to collect her ksuba, and also similarly, in a scenario where her husband brings an eid echod that the document has already been paid to her, that the ksuba has already been paid to her, so an eid echod, it could be mechayev shvuah. She would have to swear there as well. Excuse me 1 second. Sorry, Mom. Minechasim mishubadim minechsei esomim lo tipara ela bishvua. Okay, fine. Also, if she wants to collect her ksuba from nechasim mishubadim, right? Kilu, if her husband had sold money to somebody else, now her husband's properties are mishubat to her ksuba. Her husband had sold property to somebody else, so she can collect from those nechasim mishubadim because they're mishubat to her ksuba. But she would have to swear. And similarly, if she wants to collect from his orphans, from his yisoimim, from that property, also she would have to swear that she's owed the money. Where am I? Similarly, if her husband is overseas and he sends the document with an emissary, he sends the get with an emissary, so in that case also, if she is getting paid back when he is not there, so also she would have to swear v'chein. And just like in those cases, there's a shvuah. Similarly, ayisoimim lo yiparu ela b'shvuah. The orphans, the yisoimim, are only paid back b'shvuah. What this means is orphans from orphans. Shimon Jr. making a claim from Reuven Jr. Right? Shimon Jr. goes to Reuven Jr. and says that my father Shimon lent your father Reuven 100 zuzes. So Shimon would need to swear that is Shimon Jr. would need to swear that is in fact correct. One second. Okay. Yeah, I think that's the point. I think that it's that Shimon. Let me just double check. I think it's that Shimon Jr. would have to swear. What does it say? With an oath. I assume it's talking about Shimon Jr. The creditor. Yeah, exactly. So Shimon Jr. needs to make a shvuah that, as to the best of his knowledge, the loan has not yet been repaid, and therefore he's collecting it from Reuven Jr. Where are we? Shvuah shelo pokadnu abba v'lo amar lonu abba. A shvuah that our father the father did not instruct us on his deathbed. Right? A shvuah that our father did not tell us when he was dying that this loan has already been paid, and that he had never mentioned it any other time. Right? He didn't tell us when he was dying. And he never had told us any other time. We have no, right? Shimon Jr. says we have no indication that this loan has already been paid back. We also, when going through his stuff, we haven't found any kind of receipt that would indicate that the loan has been repaid, and therefore, right? So they swear that to the best of their right. So Shimon Jr. swears to the best of his knowledge that the loan is outstanding, and he can collect from Reuven Jr. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer afilu nor la'araben la'achar misasa'av. Harizin ishba v'notel. Says Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, that even if Shimon Jr. was born after Shimon died, still, he would be able to collect from Reuven Jr. He would have to Nishba v'notel, he would swear and then collect. Amr Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, im yesh edim she'omer ha'av b'shas misoso, shtar ze eino parua, hu notel shelo b'shvuah. Says Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, if there are witnesses who can attest and testify that when Shimon was on his deathbed, he said that this loan is outstanding, is unpaid, well then, Shimon Jr. can collect from Reuven Jr. even without a Shevuah, if there are those witnesses. Ve'elu nishbayin shaloi b'taine, and the following people can swear even without an actual kind of claim. They have to claim something, but Keilu doesn't have to be, they can just make a claim and they can have the other person swear. Hashutfin. Right, like it doesn't have to be like modev mikzas per se or anything like that. Ashutfin, partners, right? One partner can make the other person swear. Ve'arisin and sharecroppers, ve'apetropin and power of attorneys. Is that what they're called? Like representative people. Like for example, the apetropin for Yisomim, people represent the orphans. Ve'isha and a hanoses v'anosenes b'soch habayis, right? A woman who's involved in her husband's business dealings and administrating the estate and stuff. Uvein abayis, also a child, right? A father passed away and there's a bunch of children, and one of the children is kind of managing everything for the rest of the children. So again, in all these scenarios, like let's say in this case, one of the brothers can just make the person this one in charge swear that he's being honest, etc. But if this brother, let's say, says, "Wait, why are you making a claim about me? I'm being honest." And the other brother says, "I don't know. I just want you to swear to me that you're being honest." He has to do it. If the partners or the sharecroppers that already kind of divided things up, and nobody said any, and like everybody was happy at that time, well then you can't later on then make him swear. I hope that this is going to be elaborated upon in the Mishnah. This is in the Gemara. This is another example of where there's like actually no Rashi on this here in the Mishnah. It's like later in the Gemara on like Daf Mem Zayin or something. I don't know. Anyways, but if this, let's say this, what are we talking about? Shutfin, let's say, but if this other partner had to already swear about something else, well then, Megalglin Olav Es Hakol, well then, at that point, you can make him swear for other things as well. Ve'ashvius, Mishamites Es Hashvuah. Also, if there was some, right, comes Shevuos, comes Shevius, comes Shemitah, and it like cancels out a loan or whatever, so then like, there's no, then there's not going to be any swear. If there were any outstanding swears or shvuas or anything like that, that it all just kind of goes away when the loan itself is canceled. Okay, now moving on to the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Kol anishbayin shabator nishbayin velo mishalmim minolim. How do we know this principle of, generally speaking, the way it works is that you swear and then you don't need to pay? Minolim, how do we know this? Because the pasuk says, "Velokach bailov velo yishalem misha'olav l'shalem lo shvuah." That what is it? This is by, I think, a shomer sachar. I think Shevuos Hashem tia bein shneim im lo shalach yodo b'mlechus re'eu velokach bailov velo yishalem. That it says by a shomer chinam that he just needs to swear that he wasn't meaning. This is, I think, what scenario is this? Maybe for ones? Yeah, probably. Yeah, he just needs to swear that it was in fact ones and he didn't do anything wrong, and then he's pater. Right? V'lo yishal. He doesn't need to pay. Right. So meaning, so the shomer who, right? So Shimon gives something to Reuven to watch. The thing, some kind of ones happened. He gave him a cow and the cow died or whatever it is. So it says, so Reuven swears that this is in fact what happened, v'lo yishalim, and then he doesn't need to pay. So we see that it's Reuven who stands to pay, swears that it was in fact ones, and then he doesn't need to pay. And that's how Shevuos work. You swear, and then you're off the hook. Okay. Oh, I hear noise coming from outside. Let's see. Let me I can uncancel the noise, but only on my headphones, but it doesn't cancel the noise outside. That's going to be the next great invention. That's going to be the next great invention. Real noise canceling headphones. Like, they don't need to be headphones, I guess. Just real noise cancellation. It's like, I could just, like, turn off the noise from outside. Like, it will literally be quiet outside. That's going to be the next big invention. A noise canceling button. You just put up the button on your wall, and you press the button, and all noise is canceled. No need for headphones. That's going to be a good one. All right, where are we? And in these scenarios, they swear and take. Right? They don't swear to get off the hook. They swear to hook someone else so that they can get their money. How come one of these examples is a worker? How come a worker is one of these examples that the worker swears that he was not paid and then he is entitled to collect his wage from his employer? Amar Shmuel, halachis gedolis shanukan. Says Avira Amar Shmuel, these are big halachis. Where am I? Halachis, ani ilchasoninu. To which they say, what do you mean Allah? This is halacha l'Moshe misinai? No. El'ema takonos gedolos shanukan. Well, okay, there are big takonas here, big enactments, big takonas. Gedolos mechal deiko ketanis. What is big takonis? What they're also they're little takonis? Big takonis, little. What's a little takona? Elomer of Nachman, rather says of Nachman. Amar Shmuel, takonis kvuis shanukan. Okay, there's a fixed takon here. What does it even mean? Let me see. Can I get a translation on this? Lasting enactments? I don't understand what that means. Okay. There are fixed takonos over here. Akru rabbanan the shvua mibal abayis v'shadjua asochir mishum kidei chayev. That the rabbis said instead of Ruvain the employer swearing, Shimon the worker will swear, because, and then that would enable him, allow him to collect his salary, his payment that he's alleging has not been paid, right? What's going on here? It's the end of the day. Shimon wants to collect his wage. He says to Ruvain, can I get paid? Ruvain says, I already paid you. And the Chacham say that since this affects Shimon's livelihood and his parnasa, so we allow Shimon to swear in order to collect. We've literally seen this in Bav Metzia, I think. But that's unfair to the employer. I understand that this is the worker's parnasa, but the employer is saying that he already paid the worker. And we say, yeah, but it's the worker's parnasa, and therefore he can just swear and make you pay even though you said he already paid. But just because it's the worker's parnasa, therefore the employer needs to lose? I mean, it's important that it's the worker's parnasa, but we also have to, we can't just take advantage of the employer unfairly. Well, actually, it's in the employer's interest. This employer wants to be known as a place that has that is pro-employees, a great place to work, a place where if ever there are disputes about wages, all you have to do is go to Bezdin and hold the Sefer Torah and swear on God's name that you're telling the truth, and the dispute will be resolved, and you will be able to collect your wage. So it's in the employer's interest, right? He wants the sort of the hawk in town. He wants the people to be saying, work for Reuven. He's a very equitable employer, and if there are any disputes about wages, it will be in favor of the employee. So therefore, it's in Reuven's interest, and then everybody will want to work at his, let's say, field, and he will never have a shortage of workers. Adrabah, I could also make the opposite argument. At the same time, though, you also to have the opposite effect, which is that the employee, who we just said is very concerned about his parnasa, wants also to make sure that he is a person that people want to hire. Right? The last thing that he wants would be to end up on some kind of blacklist of all the local employers that don't hire Shimon because he disputes wages, right? So at the same time, it's in Shimon's, and you can argue that it's in Shimon's interest that, you know what, I just let Reuven swear that he already paid me. I don't want to get on anybody's bad side. I am a good employee. I want him to hire me again. So, let him swear that he in fact paid me, and then, okay, we'll move on. At least like this, I won't have any friction with my employer, and I can get future jobs. So balabayis al korche agur, to which we say yes, but at the end of the day, it is the employer who needs workers, right? If he has a field and he doesn't have people to work the field, let's say it's an orange grove, and there's nobody to pick the oranges, they're going to be ruined. So sachir al korche mizkar, you can again make the opposite argument that yes, the employer needs employees, but the employees also need employers. They also need parnosa. Ela balabayis tarud b'fay alav hu. So rather answers the Gemara, the reason why the poil, why the worker swears, is because the employer he's got lots of employees, and he's very busy with payroll with lots of people, and mistakes happen. And therefore, Shimon knows that he didn't get paid. Reuven plausibly thought he paid Shimon, but didn't. So therefore, Shimon swears that he was not paid, and he can collect. Well, if that's the case, that there's a reasonable chance or whatever, possibility that Reuven didn't pay because he's busy with all the employees. Well, then why does Shimon even need to swear? Let Shimon just say, hey, I didn't get paid, and he should be believed because Reuven's busy. Well, in order to kind of, put Reuven at ease, that like, okay, at least Shimon is swearing that he's telling the truth, and then Reuven is like, okay, fine, look, I got a lot going on. It could be that I didn't pay Shimon. Shimon sweared that he's owed the money, Beseder, I'll pay. But why doesn't Reuven just always pay his employees in front of witnesses, and that way, if there's ever any question, did Shimon get paid? Well, if he got paid, there would have been witnesses. Let's let the witnesses testify that. So that's a headache. Every single time you pay somebody, you got to make sure there's witnesses. That's a headache. How about this? Why doesn't Reuven pay Shimon at the beginning of the day? In which case, Memele, if Shimon put in a full day of work, he obviously put in a full day of work because he got paid at the beginning of the day. So everybody's happy. If Shimon didn't get paid, he just simply wouldn't have worked. Shnei and Rotenbach Kofe. Nobody wants that. Reuven doesn't want to pay at the beginning of the day before the work has been done. He wants the whole day to be able to organize money or whatever it is. And Shimon doesn't want to have to deal with walking around all day with all this money. It works out better for Reuven and Shimon to get paid at the end of the day. Yochi, afilu kotzatz nami. Well, if this is the case, that Reuven the employer has a lot going on. He's very busy, and it's plausible that he did, in fact, make a mistake and did not pay Shimon. Well, what about the following case? The case where Shimon says, Reuven, you only gave me one, I don't know, dollar, euro, shekel, dinar, zuz, I don't know, one. So Shimon says to Reuven, you only gave me one, but my salary is 2. And Reuven says, no, your salary is 1. We should say that, why don't we say the same thing there, that Reuven's got a lot of employees, he doesn't know who he's paying what, and we should trust Shimon, or at least have a way for Shimon. So let's go weiter for a second. Aloma Tanan, but Tanya, why do we have a brayse that says, Umin omer shtaim kotzatztali, v'halo omer lo katzatzti l'choyla achas? However, we have a brayse that says that if Shimon says, my wage is 2, and Reuven says, nuh-uh, your wage is 1. So Amotzi michaver olav araya. The answer is there that Shimon needs, if Shimon wants to collect 2, he's going to have to prove that his wage is in fact 2. He can't swear, he's going to have to prove it. But why don't we use the same logic? Reuven's busy, he's got a lot of employees, he doesn't actually know. Let's let Shimon swear and collect 2. So Ktsitsa Vadai Midkur Dochir Le. Well, Reuven, that's the kind of thing Reuven would remember. How much he's paying Shimon. That's like basic, kind of like, how much am I paying my employees? What are my expenses, bottom line? Like, that Reuven would remember. Okay, so that there we're not going to say, oh, Reuven's so busy, he's got so many employees, he doesn't know what he's paying. No, there we can assume he knows what he's paying Shimon. Iochi, Afilu over Zmano. Okay, so fine. Fine. Iochi. Additionally, let's make the argument, if Reuven is so busy with all of his employees, and therefore we're saying that Shimon comes to Reuven and says, I didn't get paid. Reuven says, what do you mean? I paid you. Shimon can swear that he didn't get paid and he can collect, because at the end of the day, Reuven's busy with all his employees. He may have thought he paid Shimon, but he didn't. Fine. However, there's a halacha that there's a window in which Shimon can swear that he wasn't paid and then get paid. That window is, if he's a day worker, so he has all night to get paid. By the next morning, it's too late. He can't swear anymore. But why not? If we're saying Reuven is a busy guy, he's got lots of employees, he thought he paid Shimon, but he didn't. So if that's the case, let Shimon make the swear the next day too. Why is it only all night? So, if this is the case, that Reuven's so busy with all of his employees, I feel over his mano, nami. Even once the window is closed, the payment window is closed, Shimon should still be able to, right? The zman of paying is over. Shimon should still be able to swear and collect. Aloma Tanya, why do we learn in a brayse or a mishnah? Over zmano velo nosan lo, that if the window is closed and Reuven hasn't yet paid Shimon, harize eino nishba vinotel. At that point, Shimon cannot swear that he was not paid and get paid. But why not? If the whole point is that Reuven is all busy and he loses track of things, let Shimon swear even the next day. Chazaka in Balabai is over b'Bal Tolim. Well, we have a chazaka that Reuven is not going to violate the lav of lo solim pula sochir tzad boker. Right? The Torah says you have to, if biyomo titen tzcharo, that if Shimon worked that day, so you have to pay him promptly. Don't let the night go by without paying Shimon. So Reuven's going to make sure that he paid Shimon by the next morning. I thought you said that Reuven is so busy with all of his workers, so it slipped his mind. It's not that he's intentionally looking to violate it, but it slipped his mind. So maybe he violated it, but by accident. Why can't Shimon swear the next day? No, when we say that Reuven is busy with all of his employees, that is within the payment window. But once the end of the payment window ends, i.e., daybreak is coming, at that point he properly goes over all the things. Did I pay everybody who I need to pay? And at that point he'll realize, if he in fact didn't pay Shimon, at that point he would realize, wait, I did not pay Shimon, and he would pay Shimon. Because he does not want to violate Baal Tolin, and therefore if by the next day he was still not paid, so then Shimon can't swear anymore. So during the window, when Reuven's all busy, so Shimon can swear. But by the next morning, if Shimon in fact was not paid, Reuven would have realized it and Shimon can't swear anymore. Sachir over Mishum Bal Tigzol, what are you concerned that the next morning Shimon is going to swear falsely and violate Bal Tigzol, just like you're saying that Reuven would not violate Bal Tolin, so it's also assumed that Shimon would not violate Bal Tigzol, don't steal. So what's the concern? You're saying we can't let Shimon swear the next day because we don't trust Shimon. Why don't we trust Shimon? Because if in fact he wasn't paid, Reuven would have realized by the end of the night. So you're saying that Shimon's a liar? But what about Bal Tigzol? What about don't steal? Just like we say Reuven wouldn't violate Bal Tolin, so we should say Shimon wouldn't violate Bal Tigzol. The difference is that by Reuven there are two chazakas. Chazaka number one, that he would not violate Bal Tolin, and therefore if in fact Shimon was not yet paid, Reuven would realize by the end of the night if Shimon was not in fact paid. And the second chazaka is that an employee, right, a worker, will not leave over his wage until the next day. So two things. Shimon will make sure to get paid by the end of the night, and Reuven won't violate Bal Tolin. Meaning, comes the next morning, two things happen. It's the next morning, which means that if in fact, one chazaka is that if in fact Shimon was not yet paid, Reuven would have realized. The other thing is that if Shimon in fact was not paid, he would have made the claim the night before. The fact that it's already going to the next morning, and Reuven didn't pay Shimon, and Shimon didn't make a claim, already these are like two chazakas in favor of the balabayas, and therefore Shimon can no longer swear. Even though, yes, we assume that Shimon won't steal, but that's only one chazaka, that Shimon won't steal, versus two chazakas of Reuven, which is that he would have realized by the end of the night, and the other chazaka sort of on Reuven's side is that Shimon would have claimed it the night before and not leave it till the next day. Amar of Nachman, Amar Shmuel, this is turning out to be another long daf. We just can't get past these long dafs. My oh my. I mean, we did have to do half of Mem Daled Amar Aleph, but yeah, I had a feeling it might be a long one, but I also was kind of hoping it wasn't. Amar of Nachman says of Nachman Amar Shmuel, Leishanu Ela Shesachro Be'edim. This is interesting. When we say that Shimon can swear and collect, that is only when he was hired with witnesses. Okay, there were witnesses there when Reuven hired him. Aval Sachu Shelo Be'edim. But if there were no witnesses when Shimon was hired, Mitoch sheyachol lomar lo secharticha me'olam. Well, since Reuven can just deny the whole thing, say, Shimon, you never worked here. There's no witnesses to prove otherwise. You never worked here. Memela, I don't need to pay you. Sheyachol lomar lo secharticha. That when there are no witnesses at the time of hiring, Reuven can simply, right, since he could say, I never hired you, so therefore when he says, I did hire you, but I also paid you, he's believed. Okay? So again, this whole thing of Shimon swearing and collecting is when there were witnesses at the time of the hiring, which means that Reuven can't deny having hired Shimon. And therefore, when he says that I already paid you, Shimon could swear that he wasn't yet paid. But if there were no witnesses, then the fact that Reuven could just deny the whole thing if he wants. He's already admitting, if he was lying, he could have just denied the whole thing. The fact that he's saying, no, I did hire you, but I paid you, we believe him. Amalei Rabbi Yitzchok, says Rabbi Yitzchok to Rav Nachman, Shkoich. B'chein Omar, Reb Yochanan, and so says Reb Yochanan. Michal the Palag other Reb Rish Lakish, like we saw the other day, the fact that Rabbi Yitzchak is saying this is Davka the opinion of Reb Yochanan, does that imply that Rish Lakish holds differently? Well, you could say that, look, at the time that Reb Yochanan said this, Rish Lakish didn't respond because he was in the middle of drinking something, and therefore he didn't respond because he was drinking. And then Rabbi Yochanan said what he said, and then Rabbi Yitzchak left the base of Medrash, and he never heard what Rish Lakish said, so he simply said it in the name of Rabbi Yochanan because he didn't know what Rish Lakish said on the matter. Alternatively, like we saw the other day, Rish Lakish would wait until Rabbi Yochanan was done giving a shir, and only at the end would he start challenging Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yitzchak had already left by then, so he quoted Rabbi Yochanan, he doesn't know what Rish Lakish would say. Idmar Nami was Ochit, stated Amar Rav Menashe bar Zvir Amar Rav. The Rav says the same thing as Shmuel, Loshanu Elo, Shesocharo Be'edim, that when we say that Shimon can swear and collect, it is when he is hired with witnesses. Aval, Sochro Shelo Be'edim, if Reuven hired Shimon and there were no witnesses, Mitoch Sheyochol Lomar Lo, since if Reuven was a liar, was a dishonest person, he could simply say, I never hired you. So Reuven is therefore also believed to say, I did in fact hire you, but I paid you. So Shimon can only swear and collect when there were witnesses there, when he was hired. Omer Rami Bar Chama Kam Ma'alya Hoshmaita. Says Rami Bar Chama, what a gevaldiga shtickle Torah. Omer Le Rava says to Rami Bar Chama, My Ma'al Yusa. Why is this such a great halacha? It makes no sense, argues Rava. Im ken Shevuos Shomrin dechai Rachmane Eichim Mishkachasla. But I don't understand. Right. For example, when if Reuven is a shomer sacher, but some kind of onis happens, right? The animal drops dead. So we say Reuven swears that it dropped dead, and then he doesn't need to pay Shimon, the depositor. But I don't understand. Why would Reuven have to swear? Bichlal. If Reuven was being dishonest, he could have just said, we never had a deal. You never dropped off your cow over here. So meaning, right? So since the assumption is that Shimon gave Reuven the cow without any witnesses being there, he just said, Reuven, can you watch my cow for me? So Reuven was watching the cow. The cow dropped dead. We say Reuven has to swear. Why should he have to swear? If he was being dishonest, he would just say, Shimon never gave me his cow to watch. So I don't understand. When would you ever have Shevuos? When would you ever have Shevuos Shomer? The answer is, well, if there were witnesses. So if there were witnesses that Shimon deposited his cow by Reuven, and Reuven is now saying that it died, he would have to swear in that case. Okay, but now why don't we say the same thing? Okay, fine. So there were witnesses at the time of the deposit, but why can't we say that Reuven can say, well, I already gave the cow back to you. If he was being dishonest, if Reuven was being dishonest, let him just say to Shimon, I already gave it back to you. And let's say the fact that he said, I didn't give it back to you, but it died, we should be able to believe him, since if he was dishonest, he would have just said, I gave it back. Well, the Apkid Lei Bishtar. Well, it's talking about where Shimon had, there was a document written up, and therefore Reuven can't say, I already gave you back the cow, because if you already did, then Shimon would have said, well, then why didn't you take back the document? So therefore the fact that, you never took back the document is an indication you never gave me back the cow, and therefore he can't just say I already gave it back to you, and therefore he swears, right? So he can't, if he was dishonest, he can't just say I already gave it back to you because there was a document there, and therefore therefore he has to swear that the cow in fact died. Okay, the fact that we entertained the notion that my brain is starting to go. Wow, I did not expect this daf to be so long. It's not really true, but anyways, brain, just another few minutes. What was the notion that we entertained? We had. All right, so we were talking about a situation where the deposit was deposited with witnesses, right? He said since it was deposited with witnesses, he can't just deny that it ever happened. So it was deposited with witnesses. We said, okay, but he could just pay it back without witnesses, to which we say, we don't seem to say, no, he can't. We say, but there was a shtar. So that implies that even though the deposit happened with witnesses, it could be returned without witnesses. It's the shtar that is causing the problem now. So Michlal de Tavayu Svirlu, so that means that Rav and Shmuel, who started this whole discussion about requiring, right, that if there are witnesses, that the swear is only when there are witnesses. So Svirlu, they hold that when Shimon deposits the cow with witnesses, Reuben does not need to give it back to Shimon with witnesses, which is why we're saying, but there's a shtar and that prevents him. Meaning, so yes, Reuben can give it back to Shimon on his own without witnesses, but in this particular case, since it's a shtar, that prevents him from doing it. But if there was no shtar, he would be able to without witnesses. Interestingly, when there is a document, Reuven must return it to Shimon with witnesses. I'm not sure that, at least from the Gemara, it's not clear that means literally. I think what it means is that if Reuven wants to claim that he gave it back against the shtar, meaning Shimon says, I have a shtar, and Reuven says, I gave it back to you, then he would have to have witnesses to counteract the shtar. But I think that if there's no shtar, or if he took back the shtar, we're saying, but bishtar, but I think alternatively, Reuven should be able to just give it back to Shimon and say, give me back the shtar. But if Shimon still has a shtar, then he would certainly need to have witnesses. Okay. That it was returned. Fine. Kari Rami Bar Chome Ole de Rav Sheshes. Rami Bar Chome said about Rav Sheshes, Vayosem David es hadvar ma'ele bilvavo. And David took to heart these following things that Rav Sheshes took to heart to figure out what the halacha is. Do we paskin like Rav and Shmuel? The Ashkeche Rav Sheshes l'Rav Bar Shmuel, that when Rav Sheshes found Rav Bar Shmuel, Amalei, he says to Rav Bar Shmuel, Tane Mar Midi Bisachir, have you learned anything about the sugya of the worker? Amalei, and Rav Bar Shmuel responded in, I have. Tanino, we learned in a Mishnah, Sachir Bismano Nishba V'Notel, that Shimon, when it's within the window of payment, he can swear that he is owed his wage and then collect it. Keitzad haso bisman she'omar lo schartani v'lo nasato li schari. When Shimon says, you've hired me, but you haven't paid me my wage. V'alo omer scharticha v'nasati l'cha scharcha. Whereas Reuben says, no, I hired you, and I already paid you. Okay, so I'm going to read that again. So Tanino, Sachib Bismano, right? Shimon within the window, Nishbav Notel, he swears and then he can collect. Ketzad Aso Bismancho Omelos Chartani V'lo Nasatli Schar. When Shimon says that you hired me, but you haven't paid me, V'alo Ometz Chaticha V'Nasati L'Chos and Reuben says, I had paid you, so in that case Shimon swears and he can collect his wage. Aval, but but if Shimon says, Reuven, my wage is 2, V'hala Omer lo katzatzi l'cha ela achas, no, your wage is 1, in that case Amotzi mechaveru olav haraya. Well, in that case then Shimon has to prove that in fact his wage is 2. Hamideseifa b'raya have Resha below raya. So Rav Sheshes wants, that is important, Rav Sheshes wants to be medayik from here, the fact that Davka in the Seifa of the Mishnah, when it talks about Shimon saying that his salary is that his wage is 2, and Reuven saying that his wage is 1, in that case it says he has to prove it. There has to be a raya, implying that in the Reisha, when he was talking about, yes, I hired you, but I didn't. But he says you hired me but didn't pay me. He says I hired you and I did pay you. That is without a raya, even without witnesses. Still, it says Shimon can swear if it's within the window. So Rav Sheshes wants to be medayik from this Mishnah that you don't need, right? That you swear even when there aren't witnesses at the time of the hiring, unlike Rav and Shmuel. Again, the Seifa B'Raya, from the fact that in the Seifa by the 2 and the 1, we're saying Amotz Mechaber Olav Raya, have a Reisha below Raya. So the Reisha is without a Raya, and still Shimon can swear, even though there are no witnesses. Shimon can swear. Amr of Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, no, I disagree. Reisha v'Seifa B'Raya. Both the Reisha and the Seifa are talking about where there's proof, meaning in the Reisha at the time of the hiring there were witnesses. In the Seifa, Shimon has to prove that his wage is 2. However, However, the reason why the Raya is only mentioned in the Seifa with the 2 and the 1 and not in the Reisha is because in the Seifa, bringing the proof directly enables him to get paid. Kilu Shimon brings a proof that his wage is 2. Reuven pays him 2. So the proof is what's extracting the payment. Whereas in the Reisha, the proof doesn't extract the payment, right? The proof, the witnesses, right? So again, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak is saying that it's like Rav and Shmuel, which means that when there are witnesses, so that enables Shimon to swear. If there are no witnesses, then Shimon is unable to swear, right? Because of the migo. Reuven was dishonest; he would just deny that he ever hired him. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says no. It's like Rav and Shmuel that in the Reisha also is talking about when there are witnesses, and that's when Shimon swears. So then why don't we mention the witnesses? Well, because the witnesses are only then enabling Shimon to then swear in order to then be able to get paid. The witnesses are not directly saying Reuven pay Shimon. It just the fact that they're there enables Shimon to now swear in order to get paid. So that was left out because it's more of a grama kind of thing. Whereas in the Seifa, the proof that Shimon is bringing that his wage is 2, so that directly enables him to get paid 2. We're going to hold it here. I think we're already over an hour. This sugya is a shtickle in the middle. I had a havamina to want to go all the way down to the 2 dots towards the bottom of the Amud. I thought it would be good to just keep going, but as I was reading it, I was like, okay, this is going to be way too much. It's going to be too much, and now my brain is like a little bit in too much zone, so I think it's the right thing to stop here, but we're going to have to pick up kind of in the middle tomorrostarted We started today the 7th, the second to last parak of Masechta Shevuos. Shevuos is continuing to be stark, to be like the missing chapter of Bava Metzia. And we started the parak of Kol Anishbayim Shabator Nishbayim V'lo Meshalman Ve'elu Nishbayim V'notl. Right, the concept of the scenarios where people swear in order to collect. And we started discussing the first scenario, which is the scenario of the hired worker. We discussed, why the hired worker swears and then takes his money. We saw and then gets paid. We saw the opinion of Rav and Shmuel that this, however, would only be when there were witnesses at the time of the hiring. But if there were no witnesses at the time of the hiring, then Reuven can simply then we trust Reuven, because if he was a liar, he would just say that I never hired you. So from the fact that he's saying I did hire you, but I paid you, so we would believe him. Peace out.